Welcome back. I'm Dan Betzel, and I really am excited to work with you again in this second video series. And I want to thank you for taking the time to answer those 20 must-answer questions. I hope you found it really useful. And I really enjoyed reading your insightful comments and your questions. And for those of you that participated, thank you so much. It was great. And if you haven't had a chance to participate, it's not too late. So please take some time, and I will personally respond to each and every single one of those. So let's get going into our second video here. And before we do, I want to talk once again about the opportunity that exists for each of us to fulfill and to move toward our financial future, the vision we have for ourselves and our families. And as you saw, understanding the right questions to ask from these 20 must-answer questions, it was able to position yourself and your family to make good financial decisions moving forward. And this ability is absolutely fundamental to your financial future. And if you're like many of our clients, we all share the same goals. We want to reclaim the American dream for ourselves and our family. Want to enjoy our retirement years with ourselves and our spouses with less stress. And basically want to live our daily life with a greater sense of security and peace of mind. Free from worrying about the future, the financial security for yourself and your spouse, and be able to handle the inevitable market ups and downs that occur in all of our financial lives moving forward. And of course, to live without fear of running out of money. Okay, so in this video, we're going to talk about the most common investor myths and ways we can address those myths, mitigate them, and perhaps even push them aside. Because, whatever our vision is for ourselves and our future, if we're not able to deal with these obstacles or these myths that stand between ourselves and our future, we're not going to be able to achieve them. So let's look at some various myths. Have you ever heard someone give you a stock tip? Now, when I go to a party or I'm out in public and I tell people that I'm a financial advisor, people will ask me for a stock pick, and they're often shocked when I don't have one. Because one of the biggest myths is that there is a guru, or there is a group of gurus out there that can predict the future. Well, let me tell you, there is not anyone who can consistently and predictably predict stocks. So if someone tells you that they know what a certain stock position is going to do, they're just guessing. In addition to stock picking, market timing. Market timing is this myth that by looking at what the market has done in the past and what it's going to do in the future, you can determine which asset or which asset categories are going to go up and going to go down in the future. Now, there are 19 distinct asset categories, and let me tell you once again that there is no one who can predictably and consistently time the market. Now, sometimes clients will actually point to a certain stock that a friend of theirs told them was going to go up, or they'll point to a certain asset class sector that someone told them was going to go up, and it actually did. Well, there's lots of anecdotal evidence where you can point to this particular stock or this particular asset class, but remember, the real issue is, can someone do it consistently and predictably? And if you look at the research, you will see that there is zero evidence that anyone can consistently and predictably pick stocks or time the market. Now, this third myth is track record investing. There are people that actually look at what was going on in the market in the past, and they use it as a basis for making decisions about the future. They confuse looking in the rearview mirror for looking out the front, of the car. So if you ever hear someone tell you that you should invest in this particular fund or this particular investment strategy because it did well in the past, remember that the past has absolutely no indication of how that particular fund or that particular stock is going to do in the future. So we have to work very hard to eliminate stock picking, market timing, and track record investing. And if you can just eliminate those three myths from your portfolio, you will be so far along the way toward achieving a true peace of mind and true financial security, because there's a difference between speculating and prudent investing. And whenever someone talks about stock picking, that's a form of speculation. When they talk about market timing, that is a form of speculation. And we talk about track record investing, it's not prudent investing, it's speculation. Now, this fourth myth is what you don't see can't hurt you. Unfortunately, in our industry, there are a lot of things that are not on the surface. So unless you know the right questions to ask, unless you have a system that will allow you to look deeper inside your portfolio, you don't even know what's there. And you can't allow yourself and your family to be misled by this myth that what you don't see can hurt you, because in reality, what you don't see can very, very much hurt you. It can undermine your returns in your portfolio, and it can also undermine your ability to reclaim the American dream that you want for yourself and for your family. There's hidden fees, and there's different kinds of hidden fees that exist in a portfolio. Now, this first one isn't often hidden, but people don't know what it is. Sometimes you look at a mutual fund and it might have a letter after it. It might be an A or a B or a C, and clients don't know what that means. Well, they're dealing with different kinds of upfront fees. For example, if you have a mutual fund and it's mutual fund share A, class share A, that usually means that an upfront fee of 5.25%. Turnover ratio. Now, this is very hard to see what's going on in your portfolio unless you are able to do some sort of a portfolio MRI. But a turnover ratio has to do with how often the manager of that fund is buying and selling equity positions inside of the fund. For example, if I were going to sell a car and I took it to the car dealer would offer me a certain price for the car, and then he would turn around and sell that car to someone else at a different price, right? And the difference between the price that he gives me for the car and the price that he sells the car for, it's the bid-ask spread. And so that bid-ask spread, it goes to the person who is actually engaging in the turnover. So if you have a mutual fund that has very, very high turnover ratio, that's another drag on your portfolio. And in addition to upfront sales loads, turnover ratios, all funds have annual fund expenses. So this is just an expense to manage the fund. We can just say it's about 1% normally. So for example, if a fund at the end of the year, it has a 5% rate of return, you don't really know what the real return could have been unless you know the drain on that percent from the turnover ratio and the annual fund expense. So just by being aware of these and knowing the right questions to ask, you can make a better decision as you move forward in implementing your portfolio strategy. So, myth number 5, I can do this myself. Now, there are always people that think they can do it themselves, and as a attorney I'm inactive right now, but we always had a joke that the worst client that an attorney can have is himself. So when an attorney tries to manage their own legal cases, it's usually very, very difficult because they become very emotionally involved in them. So the myth is I can do it myself, but behavioral finance tells us that most people, it's a very, very rare person who's able to manage their emotional life when it comes to their investment. They often do the exact opposite thing of what they should do because of the emotions that are involved in it. So, all of these myths are very important and they have to all be dealt with. But the number one challenge, the number one myth that I want to focus on for purposes of our discussion today, what I think holds people back and what I'd like to give you is the tools to be able to analyze your own current portfolio is costs. Because these costs, they drain your portfolio, they're hidden. So it takes a little bit of work to find out what these costs are, but once you find out what these costs are, it's really illuminating, and then it gives you the power to be able to reallocate your portfolio in such a way that you'll be able to often dramatically reduce the costs. And if you can dramatically reduce your costs, what are you actually doing? You are actually getting greater return with no extra risk. So what if you could simply lower your portfolio costs by only 1%? And the most clients I work with, it is not difficult at all to do this. But if you could lower your portfolio costs by 1%, you would increase your returns by 1%, right? 1% ratio with no additional risk. That would be truly amazing. And over time, to have a portfolio that had a 7 or 8% rate of return, and now suddenly you had a 9 or 10% rate of return, over the life of your portfolio, over the life of your retirement, the results can be staggering. So, I'm going to give you a case study about hidden costs. If you're like most people I meet in my office, you're really not sure of all these many costs that are hidden inside your portfolio. Now, a client once said to me, well, how can they do this? How can they hide these fees? Well, they're not really hidden. Have you ever seen like a prospectus that you get when you open up an account? The information's in there. It's also available online, but it's not easy to find unless you have someone, a guide, to help you look for those and you know actually what you're looking at. Well, the situation is I met with a husband and wife. They had gone to one of my workshops. They were a really, really wonderful couple. They had worked with the same advisor for over 20 years, and they really liked him, and they trusted him. But the problem was, I asked them, one of the 20 must-answer questions is, do you know the total costs associated with your portfolio? And when I asked them that question, if they knew the total commissions and costs they were paying, they didn't even know where to begin to answer the question. So what I did for them is I did a cost analysis on their portfolio. It's actually a part of the portfolio MRI. And first, I saw that they had these mutual funds, and they were Class A. They were Share A mutual funds. They didn't know what that meant. Well, I told them that in their particular situation, 5.25 of every investment dollar is paid as an upfront expense. They had noticed that when they made a contribution to the fund, for example, they put in $100, that they didn't see the $100. They saw the $100 less the $5.25 that was pulled out immediately as an upfront cost. But that was only the beginning. So if they invested $1,000, they paid $52 upfront in costs. There also was annual operating expenses of 1.1. What does that mean? It means every year the fund pulls out 1.1% to pay all the various expenses of operating that fund. So if the gross return was 10%, you wouldn't see 10%. You would see 10% less 1.1. What about in a down year? What if your account's actually down 3 or 4%? They're still going to take their 1.1%. So it's annual operating expenses. Then I asked about fund turnover. And often when I ask clients about fund turnover, they look at me kind of like perplexed. What do you mean fund turnover? We told you we've worked with this guy for like 18 years. We've never bought or sold. We've always kept the same funds. But they didn't realize that the 5 or 6 funds that they had inside their portfolio, each one was being managed by a different fund advisor. And each fund advisor was buying and selling at the rate of 85% per year. So every time they buy and sell, remember that bid-ask spread, the difference between what you can buy something for and then what it's turned around and sold for? Another drain in their portfolio. And they were shocked. So we had the upfront costs, we had the annual operating expense costs, and we had this turnover. When you put those together, it was a significant drain on their portfolio. And you know, it's one thing to have this as an academic exercise, but when you realize that it impacts a family's ability to claim their American dream, and it impacts their peace of mind, and it impacts their cash flow and their income flow during retirement, then it's like we have to do something to address this. So, the costs associated with buying and selling so often for this turnover ratio can be a real drag on the return of the fund. So, the solution. We were able to eliminate many of these costs, and it was not difficult. And this had a direct and potentially dramatic impact on the portfolio's performance. So if we have all these expenses, if we get rid of the 5.25% up front, we can lower the 1.1 expense ratio and almost eliminate turnover. The effects on a portfolio can be staggering. So any amount you save in fees is greater return for you. So here's the question. It's a very important question. So How much better must your portfolio perform and overcome all of these costs and fees? Is that manager really able to, by stock picking and market timing and track record investing, are they really able to engage in that type of financial speculation on a consistent and predictable manner that it's worth it to pay all these fees? Well, the answer is actually quite daunting, that the solution is to lower these fees and to eradicate the unnecessary ones, right? If we can do that, I think it'll be a great, important step for you and your family in moving forward with your financial dreams. So, let's take some action. It's all great, it's all theoretical, but how does it apply to you and to your family? So let me ask you one of the 20 must-answer questions that you answered at the end of last video. Do you know the fees you're paying? Can you tell me exactly, are there any upfront fees? What are the, what's the turnover ratio for your various funds? What are the annual expenses? And I'm sorry to say there are even some more additional fees that as you take action, you'll be able to get even more insight to. But I've created a worksheet for you. And it's going to allow you to see the many fees and expenses associated with your various funds. And it's a little bit of work, but it's going to be so worth it for you and your family to have a clear idea of the total costs and fees you're paying. So what I want you to do is I want you to click below to access this worksheet. And take some time and work through it. And I am confident that by understanding the fees inside your portfolio, you'll be able to see these hidden costs that are draining your returns. And it's not just that they're draining your returns. They're actually, sometimes you don't even know it. They're undermining your investment goals and ultimately your peace of mind for the future. So it's well worth the time. So, and once again, I'm very excited to hear about your comments. And so as you work through the worksheet, please feel free to leave any questions, to leave any comments. Again, I will personally respond to them, and I'm very excited to engage in a conversation and engage in this kind of community building with you. Now, the next video is where we're going to put all of this together. In the next video, we're going to look at some real-life case studies. And I'm going to illustrate the various myths that we talked about today, and how these myths were standing between a client's current state and where they wanted to go, and how we were able to help them mitigate and sometimes even eradicate these myths. And it's really exciting for me as an advisor to be able to help clients work through that process. So don't forget to post your questions and comments, and also head over to your inbox because the third video is waiting for you. Thank you again.